Ramaphosa delivered the keynote address at Constitutional Hill in Johannesburg, marking the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In his speech, he says that it's no coincidence that our Constitution was signed into law by Nelson Mandela on the same day that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights had been adopted by the UN General Assembly 8 years earlier. So just how has South Africa fared regarding human rights since democracy? To give us a view, I'm now joined via Skype by Dewa Mavhinga, who's a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. Thanks very much for joining us on the line. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Peter, for having me on the program.
All right, so this is a significant day in terms of human rights globally. So many nations, so many years ago, signed up for this. How has South Africa fared, do you think, since 1994?
I think we need to acknowledge that South Africa has done extremely well, given that it is a political and economic powerhouse across Africa. And the South African Constitution of 1996 is a model in terms of human rights provisions and human rights respect. South Africa has gone beyond many other African and global states in terms of its provisions for non-discrimination, for equality, for non-discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, for example. And South Africa as a nation has helped to try and resolve conflicts in countries like Burundi, Zimbabwe, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Swaziland, Lesotho, and now South Sudan. So these are notable developments. There have been challenges, particularly in the last few years, when it seemed that South Africa was moving away from the Nelson Mandela legacy, which was that human rights will be the light that guides South Africa's foreign policy agenda. So we saw that South Africa, for a moment, wanted to withdraw from the International Criminal Court and abandon victims of international crimes. But with the ascendance of President Ramaphosa in February this year, there has been positive developments. And also to acknowledge Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, recently she said South Africa is reviewing its voting patterns in multilateral institutions, including the UN Human Rights Council. That is very welcome because it is now putting front and center South Africa's constitutional values and national interests in line with the Nelson Mandela legacy.
All right. So there are a number of other areas, I guess, that perhaps when we talk about human rights, we don't often put top of mind. I mean, there are more than 11,000 children with disabilities that are on waiting lists to go to school. This is depriving them of their human right to basic education.
Absolutely. So what we need to distinguish, Peter, here is that on the paper, normatively, South Africa has done very well in terms of acknowledging the rights. But in terms of implementation, there is a huge gap, particularly on socio-economic rights. You have mentioned access to education for children with disabilities. That's one area. We saw in the last 2 years the shameful and scandalous disaster of mental health patients, the Life Esidimeni tragedy that left, many patients dead because of the bungling in terms of the provincial government of Gauteng. We have also seen challenges in terms of the rights of protesters, what happened with the Marikana massacres by the police. So policing in South Africa remains a challenge in terms of the use of excessive force. We saw a challenge in Cape Town around the water crisis and access to water for millions of Cape Townians. So these are some of the challenges that need prioritization by the government of South Africa in terms of resources and commitment to dealing with these issues. There are a number of communities in mining areas that have had challenges with regulating their and enjoying their rights in relation to the rights of mining companies. South Africa also needs to look at this and ensure that there is sustainable development that respects the rights of communities, even as mines get to work.
All right, and perhaps finally, we can't leave a conversation like this at this time when we're talking about women in general, and I just wonder how we've done in terms of women's rights in particular.
Well, there is a huge challenge of a culture that needs to change. We have seen that there has been rampant abuses and violence against women, and some of it involving high-profile political figures. And the police need to do much more to comprehensively and thoroughly investigate these crimes and punish them appropriately. We need, there is a huge gap in terms of the promotion of the rights of women. So this is an area that the government can do more by putting resources to policing in communities to support and protect women.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it. Thanks very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us. That was Dewa Mavhinga, who's a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. All right, we're going to take a break and we'll see you at the top of the hour with your story right here on the SABC News Channel. Stay with us.